Welcome back to the Success Blueprint. I'm with my business partner, Jason. This is the show where we break down the habits and the mindset behind extraordinary success stories. And today we've got someone who's turned NFL discipline into real estate dominance. Former Detroit Lions wide receiver, entrepreneur, and investor Ryan Broyles. So Ryan, you went from catching passes in the NFL to catching opportunities in real estate. What does success mean to you today compared to when you were in the league?
Well, I think ultimately success is what you set out to achieve and you actually are doing the steps. I think in this day and age, everyone wants to skip the steps and not think about the grunt work that they're doing along the way. They just want the finish line. Success to me is having a goal and having a plan. And each step, even if it's baby step 1 or 2, quote Dame Ramsey, you're right on your way to success. So I don't think there is an end game. It's just whatever goal you have out there, and you start to knock down those dominoes.
Seems like that's pretty common now, where you see people, they want to be at the top of the mountain without climbing it, right?
Yeah, the grunt work. You got to have it for sure.
Yeah, you see the people that are making money quick, and they just think they'll be there anytime. So that's awesome.
So, Ryan, we talked a little bit before. I told you I saw an article about you that we'll dive into all of that, and I'll let you tell that story. But this is something that I've always admired, and I've actually shared this story with people throughout this 10 years that I've read it several times every year, because it's something that it's something I believe in, and I try to help my friends and family and people, to believe in. But before we dive into all of the real estate and your career, let's take us back to Oklahoma and where you started in college, and tell us about you and how it all started.
Yeah, so we all have a story, right? So I can take you back to call it elementary. My mother was a single mother of 4 kids. We lived at my grandma's house until I was 5 years old. As of late, she's told us she was brave to make the change and make the move. She wanted us to be in a better environment. So she moved us down to the suburbs of Norman, Oklahoma. She didn't know anybody here, essentially. At that point, we got into school. She tried to figure out on her own. My stepfather stepped in the picture around 7 or 8 years old, which he's my father. He's since passed, but he's the one that pretty much gave me my work ethic, a stable father figure at home that allowed us to feel protected, safe, and he was a good role model for us. So humble beginnings at the beginning, from hotels to motels to Section 8 to apartment buildings. Yeah, early on. And then I would say my parents got their financial footing, around 10 or 11 years old. So just going into middle school, and life kind of settled down for us. The elementary days, I went to 6 of maybe 9 elementary schools in a matter of 3 or so years when we moved to Norman. So it was definitely different. But life started to change. My father figure came into our life, and like I said, gave us some sense of peace and security, especially for my mother. Then I would be honest with you, if ball was our way out. My mom says it all the time. If it wasn't for ball, we probably no telling how we would have turned out. She said when we played ball was our escape from life. And so I think that's what allowed me and my siblings to be good athletes. There was never a time, I was always thinking I was going to make it to the NFL, even at 8 years old. My father's favorite team, Chicago Bears. My mom was the Cowboys. Being from Oklahoma, huge Cowboys fan. I always wanted to be Emmitt Smith. So there wasn't a time the ball wasn't in my hand and I didn't say I was Emmitt Smith, right? Michael Irvin, those guys. So really my whole life and identity was around sports, to be honest with you. It gave me joy I was good at, and moved forward from there. And then on top of that, to play ball, my parents would always say, hey, you got to get your grades. If you come home with the C on your report card, you're not going to practice, right? So they kind of set that standard early on for us. And so I've always taken education seriously. Obviously, ball was serious, and excel at those things. And, I went into high school, and I was a little guy. I was 5'10", 148 pounds. And, there were people even much bigger than me then, like, he might not be able to make it. He's a good athlete. No one really believed. And so I've always carried that chip on my shoulder, even today in the sport, in the in the business world. But that gave me a mental leg up. I think being a smaller guy, having to prove myself, do a little bit more than others. Started getting scholarships in high school, and then on to college. Committed to the University of Oklahoma. Came here, sat on the bench, School of Hard Knocks. Got in a little trouble as a freshman. Another eye opener for me. I guess we all kind of have those stories, right? And then after that, hit the ground running as a redshirt freshman. First game out the gate, set a freshman record at OU. I had like 6 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. I feel like I say that all the time to many people. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I think I can make it to the NFL. And, my college career kind of went that way after that, and then on into the NFL, getting drafted by the Detroit Lions in the second round.
Wow.
So it was a blessing. I feel like everything that I kind of spoke into existence, I've kind of fulfilled. Crazy little story I can tell you here before we go on to the next thing. I just met one of my old basketball coaches. I haven't seen him for 20 or so years. I saw him at Starbucks last week. And, so you always get like, you see your older coaches as an adult when you were a kid. And the first thing I said is, hey, I am sorry for being a knucklehead. Because I was that. I was a kid that was always good at sports. I'm like, coaches can't teach me anything. I'm going to do my own thing. I was that guy, honestly, until I started realizing, mentors are good for you in your life. Well, anyway, he came up to me and he was like, Ryan, like, you probably don't remember this. You were in my class. It was a business development, life development class. And we were supposed to write a paper about what we want to be when we grow up. And so this is actually kind of fitting that we're on this podcast a week after this conversation. So we sit down, he says, hey, everybody take out a piece of paper. And he's like, he didn't say, Ryan, class, go ahead and write down 2 sentences, what you want to be and why you want to be. So he tells me, I sat down, the whole class sat down. I crossed my feet and I didn't write anything. I was kind of that kid, unfortunately. So he stands up, a teacher looking at him. I think I was in probably 9th grade at the time, looking at a 9th grader, like, why aren't you listening? And he said, I looked at him and said, I know what I'm going to be. And so he said, okay, well, what is that going to be? And he said, I was going to make it to the NFL. And he said, the whole class laughed at me. Okay. And so he said, I stood up and I looked at everybody in the classroom and I said, watch me.
Wow.
And that was profound.
Or 9th grade, you said?
9th grade. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow. I was always a confidence kid, but hearing that story in detail, it was pretty neat to hear. And I kind of live my life that way. If you speak something to an existence, kind of becomes who you are. And, obviously not everyone's going to have the physical abilities to make it professional, but I set the bar high and I was able to achieve that.
So what did you learn, like when you achieved that from 9th grade? You had a great college career, you set a record, and then, you go to the NFL. What are some things in that? I love how you said the steps in the process. What's some things that you've learned in that?
You got to have a plan. I think sports has been so good to many athletes, especially youth athletes. So I tell kids all the time, I remember vividly, even in the NFL during training camp, we would sit down with a piece of paper and what are your goals? Off season, do you want to gain weight? Do you want to get faster? Football field, who do you want to become before the season started? It's almost like a business plan, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of lived my life that way, putting steps ahead of me. And I wouldn't have been that kid if I didn't play sports. I wouldn't have learned what it looks like to, might not be good enough, but working at something and chipping away. And becoming your best self. You got to set the bar high. We won't always achieve that, but if you don't set the bar high, you might fall halfway or even under that. So I was always trying to achieve something I set my mind out to. And I know a lot of people say, don't share your goals or aspirations to people because they might knock you down. I get energy. I'm going to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to share it with the world. It puts pressure on myself to produce.
Yeah.
So I guess that's one of those deals that kind of, I put something on paper. This is who I want to become. I'm going to believe in that. I'm going to think about that on a daily basis, even if it's just, I want to shave off a split second of my 40 time. Okay, what do I have to do that? Now, in 9th grade and college, I didn't really think in depth that way. Now, when I talk to kids, I talk to them about those baby steps. You might not have it all today, but if you focus on that one step and you perfect that, then it's time to move on to the next one.
I love that. You must have had a lot of, just perseverance. Just pushing through. You've had, what was some setbacks or, some things that you had to push through?
Yeah. So in college, like I said, after my freshman year, I was making plays. I was freshman All-Americans and, I had 2-time All-American in college and everything was going my way. And it wasn't until my senior year that I had my first major, I guess I would say, injury. So the eighth game into my senior year, I tore my ACL. And I actually had the opportunity of going to the NFL after my junior year. I had a second round grade. I always had circled, I'm going to be a first round guy. I knew I had opportunities of setting NCAA records if I came back from my senior year. I had my diploma that I could have gotten. So I chose to forego the NFL after my junior year, come back my senior year, tear my ACL. I had an agent at the time, and I'm like, oh, well, like, what's going on? And so he's starting to talk to GMs, NFL GMs, and he's like, Ryan, like, your grade could be anywhere from, or your draft could be anywhere from second to undrafted now. And so really kind of, everything was good. I was never injured playing ball, and that was my one goal, and I get that setback. And so then I go into, and I think this is really where my perseverance really came in, and my belief of whatever happens, I'm going to put my best foot forward. So after I got injured and my agent's telling me, you might not even go drafted, I made sure when I'm going to go train, I'm going to train like I'm a first rounder. And so I had an opportunity of going to the NFL Combine. I got to compete on the bench. That was the one thing I could do. I didn't have my legs. And so it's about a 3-month process from January, after my senior year, January to call it March, where I couldn't do anything but bench. So I was like, all right, well, if that's all I could do, I'm going to show up. So I get to the NFL Combine. It's the only thing I got to compete in, and I led all the receivers in bench press. So I think I did 225, maybe 24 times. Nice. And that's all I had to focus on. Well, I got the opportunity of doing a pro day, had a pro day just after the combine. A lot of coaches came out, scouts came out, said, Ryan, you look good, keep working. Then my name gets called second round. It was a blessing, especially hearing I could go undrafted. So I was like, you know what? And at that moment, and obviously there's a lot of moments, but at that moment, we're talking about rich dad, poor dad. I was thinking, God, you really blessed me with this opportunity of getting a check. It's called a check, any check. We didn't have many checks growing up, getting a check. Right. And I'm going to do the best I can with that. So that's when I started studying financial peace, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, and I fell upon the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And so as I was coming into money, I started learning that aspect of business and finances. And I don't know if I didn't have that injury. Obviously, my parents talked to me. I've had mentors in college that talked to me about making good decisions if you make it. Right. So it kind of was already planted, but tore my ACL, got blessed to get drafted, and then I was like, I'm gonna do the best with this. So I didn't want that to go to waste.
Ryan, would you agree though that it would have to be a choice, right? Like your mentors in college and things like that can tell you all these things, but if you're not receiving it, like you have to read those books, and it has to become your knowledge or, your own education, because to me, like, it's easy for people to tell you and get that good advice. But I don't know, for myself, I have to hit like these snags before I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty smart of what they told me.
Yeah, no. So I, to give you a little background here. So when I was in college, when I was a freshman, there's a thing called FAFSA where, your parents are making enough money where you get a Pell Grant. So I got $4,000 my freshman year, and my car was a hand-me-down. It was falling apart. So I used that $4,000 to buy my own car. So I've been working. I was mowing yards at 10 years old. So I was already kind of had that momentum and working and saving to go to basketball, football tournaments in my youth years. I would mow, save that money, give it to my coach. He spent on jersey, food, and travel. So I was already in that aspect and that thought of things. But yeah, I would say this too. So when we got drafted, all the rookies, if you get drafted, you go to Canton, Ohio. And this is before you even report to training camp, your rookie year, where they bring all the rookies from every team together. And I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but the Rookie Symposium is where it's a 3-day, call it seminar of player development type of deal, where you go to Canton and you talk about various topics. It's personal finance, what to expect from your family when you get a check, food etiquette, how to cut a cigar, how to put on a suit, how to present yourself in a meeting. It's this 3-day deal where it's just so much information. And there was one that talked about personal finances, and it talked about 60 or 70 guys go broke within 5 years of making to the NFL. And so the NFL, I'm sure you've heard of it, stands for not for long. And I'm thinking, right after this injury, I get drafted and I'm hearing this, there's no way I'm messing up. So there was definitely things in life. I'm not who I am today without, the good Lord, friends and family, good and bad examples, right? I'm a complete makeup of those things. And so I knew at that point that I would be coming into money. Nobody in my family has ever graduated from college. We've always lived at the poverty line. Nobody in my family has a CPA, financial advisor, insurance agent, any of these professional attorneys, right? And I'm like, all right, I've got the opportunity now, and I'm going to share it. And that's why I've been so adamant, like you said, on some of those articles that you mentioned earlier. Like, I get to mentor so many people and share what I believe to be needed, especially in this day's economy, and really for the youth that don't have that example at home. And I'm like, hey, you look like me. We have the same goals. Now let me share from my perspective, because to be honest with you, there's not many people like me that are doing this, right? Yeah. And so I get to give that back, especially in a sport like football, right? So yeah, I know I went on a little rant there. I feel very passionate about the information I've learned. There's not been a reason many people in my family even need to learn about a financial advisor. They don't even have an extra dollar to put into investment. So now I've learned that, and I'm able to share it. And, my mom's got accounts now. My siblings have accounts now, right? And so I get to share awesome. Those things with people in my community.
That's so awesome. And even to have, I was just thinking back to get drafted in the second round when you're probably still rehabbing your injury at that time, I would assume. If you're in yes. eight games in, so to have still the current injury and to be drafted in the second round, those interviews must have been awesome. They must have really liked what they saw as far as attitude and things like that in those interviews.
Yeah, you got to show up mature for the most part. And, hey, there's going to be adversity in sports. There's going to be injuries. And I showed up as if I wasn't injured. Let them know I'm going to work hard. And, I had a good strength coach named Jerry Smith in college. And so he would always say, find a way, big dog, right? If you're not on the field, find a way. If you're on the field and you've got a job to do, find a way. There's no excuses. And so I've lived that mentality every day, every year, every new challenge. And now into business, I'm just to have the same mentality.
That's awesome. And so how long were you in the league?
3 years.
3 years. That's what I thought. Okay. So what was that transition like, coming from the league and everything focused around that to what you're doing now? It's obviously been a few years, but how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so the transition actually started while I was in the league, to be honest with you. So
really?
After reading those books, before I even touched the field in the NFL, I was I started investing. I bought my first rental property in 2012. I want to say it was October. So I got drafted in April. Season starts in September. Had a good friend of mine that played receiver with me at OU. His parents were flipping houses in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just north of Oklahoma City. Hey, Ryan, my parents are flipping houses. They got a deal, right? And, I'm still young and I'm reading these books. So I'm like, hey, Robert Kiyosaki said, invest in real estate. You got to put your money somewhere, right? Awesome. And so I trusted him in that first deal, his family in that first deal. By November, house was done. It got appraised and I doubled my money.
Wow.
Heck yeah.
And I was going to sell it because I was going to set out. I set out to flip houses because that's what I was learning from biggerpockets.com or things like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm still going to practice at the same time. I'm still focused on football. But, you get an hour or two here or there to actually focus on, some other things. And I wasn't playing the first half of the season. So I was like, let's go ahead and dive into that. Let them do their thing. Came back, no appraisal, doubled my money. And I'm like, okay, this might be it. Well, finished that season. In the off season, I bought 3 more rentals. And so that's kind of the transition. So I walked away from football going into my 4th year after injury. So going into my rookie year out of college, I had my left ACL. About game, I think 12 my rookie year, I tore my right ACL. So I was played 4 or 5 games that first year. And my mind was already turning before that in college. What am I going to do after ball? So started making those decisions, doing real estate while my rookie year. Going the off season after my first year, like I said, bought 3 rental properties, went back to training camp, playing ball. My second year, week 10, 12 again, I tear my left Achilles versus Dallas Cowboys. And I'm like, man, all right, find a way, big dog, with football's not over yet. So I finished my 3rd year healthy. And then going into the training camp, my 4th year, my body just really wasn't holding up. I knew, there was a possibility of getting cut. So after the 3rd, there's 4 preseason games. After the 3rd one, I said, Coach, playing time's not looking like it needs to be. Let me go ahead and test the market. They released me. I sat on the couch for a couple months. I got a call to go try out for the Jacksonville Jaguars. During that transition, I was kind of already throwing the towel, to be honest with you. Got the call. I remember about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go train out there. I'm outside at the park, just running around and doing cone drills again, right? Trying to pick it up. Maybe there's a last chance here. Didn't get the call back after that. I sat on the couch, honestly. I want to say at that time, I probably had 5 or 6 rentals at that time. I knew football was about done. I was a bit depressed during that time because, you played ball from 8 to 27 years old. Like, what am I going to do? I sat on the couch. I got vegged out. I think I gained a little weight at that time. And, I was like, hey, all right, Ryan, it's time to be poor pill. Stop being poor pill for me. So another deal came on my table when I was living in Texas. And this real estate agent, she had this seller that had, I want to say 8 houses. It was like maybe 6 in Houston and 2 in Dallas. And I'm like, all right, this is my opportunity to go big time. At least what I thought was big time at 27, 28 years old. And so I sit down with the lender. And the lender is looking at my portfolio of 6 or so homes. I come in with my financial statements, all the stuff that Dave Ramsey, Bigger Pockets, all like the balance sheet's already ready. And the lender looks at me and says, Ryan, you're a real estate professional. And I'm like, what? Like, oh, maybe I am. You know what I mean? I didn't believe it until she told me. So once she told me that, I was like, all right, this is my new job for sure.
I love that.
Yeah. You gotta have somebody there sometimes to kind of make you feel confident, or at least say, all right, maybe that's who you are and you believe it, and you got to get a little confidence from that.
So one of the headlines of those articles, and we actually, I'll go back to this quote that we had, is a luxury once tasted becomes a necessity. And so we had a guy on our podcast that was, talking about living within his means. Living within your means. And so one of the things that stuck out was the headlines of the budget that you had for yourself when you were in the pros. So
Yes.
Can you talk about that? And I mean, you don't have to talk about your signing or whatever. I don't know, whatever that is. But
transparent. Yeah.
And sure. So talk about that and maybe what that looked like and maybe what that felt like amongst your peers of what, your teammates, versus what they were doing.
Yeah. All right. So that's kind of loaded, but I'll give you some color here. After the rookie symposium, we're in the locker room with our guys. I was drafted to come replace a guy named Nate Burleson. He's doing all kind of NBC. You probably have heard of him. And he's my locker mate. And he's at the time 30. I'm 24. And he's like, Ryan, like, hey, you got some good startup money. And it was over $1 million, right? And I'm like, startup money, like, what does that mean, right? I'm like, dang, okay, maybe I'm not as rich as I thought I was. Well, weeks go past. And so back in the day, this is like when ACH payments were really starting to happen, right? And so you had 2 options to get your check, and it was a weekly check. You have a game on Sunday. If you win, you don't go in the office or the locker room on Monday. Tuesday, you show up. Tuesday morning when you walk in at 6 a.m., if you decided not to do an ACH payment, you can get a money order and they put it in your locker. So I go in one day and they's like, hey, come look at this, right? And so I look at his check and I'm like, okay, it makes sense. I got startup money, right? He's like, hey, come look at Calvin Johnson's check, right? Calvin signed for $110 million in 20, I don't even know what year it was. So and I looked at his game check. So just full transparency, Nate Burleson is making like $900,000 a game, right? I go down 8 different lockers. Calvin Johnson's making like $3 million a game. And I'm looking at my check, full transparency, and it's $60,000. So I'm like, oh, okay. Like that gave me, growing up where I grew up, $1 million was a lot, right? But then when I see these guys that have been in the league for 10 years and being successful, oh, there's another level of wealth, right? So I was humble from the very beginning. But I will say this, when it came to the budget, so the headline talks about an NFL athlete that is off $60,000 a year. A part of me looking back on it, it shouldn't even have been a story, but it was neat. It wasn't intentional. And that's the thing. And so just to give you a thought on this is, so I'm reading these finance books, right? We came from humble beginnings. I kept the same car that I bought as a freshman, me and my wife, we got married right before my rookie year. We moved to Detroit, brought all of our college furniture with us. She kept her same car. We just lived normal, right? I would say my budget on rent was probably a little high then, not compared to what I was making, but it was like, hey, that's going to be a little splurge for me. Well, anyway, that was my splurge, was that in itself. But I met with the financial advisor during my rookie year. And this is probably the beginning of my rookie year. And I interviewed like 30 different guys, just like I do with my agents. And so one guy sat down and says, "Hey, well, what are you guys spending every month?" And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, "Well, spend the next 3 or 4 months figuring out what you spend." So we looked at the numbers, the credit card statements, whatever it might be, and it just kept hitting $5,000 a month. And that's with rent. And the car was already paid off and it was just 5,000. So when they talk about the $60,000 items, we were just living, I thought we were living good, right? Like that number. And that's why I feel like it wasn't intentional not to go spend the way that most guys would. Now, on the flip side of that, Calvin Johnson, he had a different car for different seasons, right? But he had the wealth to do that. There were some rookies the same year I came in, drafted 4th to 7th round, had far less startup money than I did. Their mom had a new car. They had 2 cars. They just did it a little bit differently. But I would say this, from what I was self-educating myself on and thinking about my past with the injuries and the game really not being for long, I had a different perspective. So I didn't really feel like the need to show up. And I tell people often, like, I'm from Norman, Oklahoma, right? So like, we've got money here, but it's not like California money. So I never felt that I had to press to be something. Like in the off season, I'm coming back to Norman. Like, you know what I mean? A new suburban's good enough. Now, if you lived in LA or Manhattan or something, you probably need to feel like you're somebody. You probably had to spend $100,000 for the car. I didn't have to do that, and I live my life that way. And I actually take pride in spending less than I make, and I find pride in spending less than I make and knowing I could spend more.
I love that. Did so in that culture where there is just an offset in a different spectrum of high earners and then, you know, definitely you were on the lower scale, just being a rookie and making your way into the league. Was there, like with the vehicles or your lifestyle, was that, I mean, how was that accepted, or was it not even that big of a deal with others?
Oh, yeah, they gave me a hard time with my Trailblazer. So I bought a 2005 Trailblazer as a freshman in college. So that would have been 2007. So it was already 5 years old at that time. So I get to the league and they're like, "Ryan, why are you still driving that Trailblazer? It got a couple dents in it." You know what I mean? Like, "Hey, you got second round money. You should go buy you something new." And I'm like, I don't need it. Like I'm in the locker room all day. I don't need it. But I never felt pressured. And the thing is, it's like, I think they respected that. And still to this day, those guys in the locker room, they will call me, "Ryan, I've got this business plan. I know you were smart with your money. What do you think I should do?" And I think by the way that I lived then, they're like, people want to do that. They want to be around something that's different, which I didn't really feel like I was different. I just didn't need much, you know? And now, obviously, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, it talks about the quadrants and living off your cash flow. I was like, let me just build everything, all cash flow. All the money is going to build a cash flow. And now my life's in a different position where I've built some businesses. I've got some investments. And I'm like, all right, now that extra money, we can go do some things with. So I was once way more frugal than I am now. Like I said, I've got the Porsche Panamera. My wife still thinks it's silly that I have that, but I'm like, that's my dream car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah.
Live like nobody does, so you can live like nobody can, right? Like the Dave Ramsey mantra.
That's definitely the saying. And I will say this, after the multiple injuries I had, I was like, you know what, whatever I have, you know, I want to invest it, compound interest. I'm not going to do anything crazy that's going to make me go work for the man when I'm done. So that's kind of the perspective I've had.
I love that.
It's awesome.
Did it take, sounds like you were ingrained with it pretty early, hard worker, you know, that you had, I mean, just great attributes about you. You know, obviously you had to grind it, you know, to get into college ball, and you had to overcome some stuff to go into the pros. So would you say discipline was just kind of ingrained into you on different things like that? Or is that something that you have to practice, or what would you say?
Well, man, I started mowing lawns at like 8, 9 years old. So I was just a worker, you know, and then you had great coaches around you that trust in you. You know, my parents would wake up every Saturday. We're cleaning baseboards, right? We're vacuuming, we're cleaning the house. Like there was always something to do, one, to keep us busy, but two, responsibilities. Yeah. And so I can't say that It's not all God given. It obviously was people in my life that kind of molded me and my siblings this way. I wish I could just say, it was God gifted, God given, but there was a lot of responsibility and I had a lot of coaches, honestly. Everything was placed around sports. And, went from quarterback at fifth grade to sixth grade playing receiver. I had a coach say, Ryan, if you're going to make it, you need to play receiver. So I moved to receiver, right? Coach said, hey, yo, like, you can make it if you start blocking. So then I started blocking. I just kind of just trusted everybody to lead me in a good way. Cool. So I guess at that time I was a good listener, a good follower, a good believer of those that were before me. I don't know. My parents, guess they taught me to listen. Yeah.
That's unusual in youth, right? Kids are usually not the ones that are going to be listening.
Yeah, and I was definitely a knucklehead. Don't get me wrong, but I think that the times that you really need to listen, I think I did that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you definitely have built something incredible, and it's awesome that your peers still call and ask for advice, and rightfully so. I mean, you've done some things right and continue to do some things right. When with your family and things like that, how have you balanced life, work, you know what I mean? All of those different things, investing, real estate. How do you balance all of that stuff?
Balance I think that's a heavy word because I'm definitely off balance often. And I think as the kids start to age in different age groups, things do change. So when they were very young, I wasn't even started a business. I didn't have my property management business, didn't have my sales business, didn't have my construction business. I was just simply investing. I kind of had my own time, didn't have any employees, right, as they were younger. And as they started to age, get into some homeschooling and things like that, I might have a little bit more time where I can start focusing on my businesses a little bit more. I have a great wife. I've got to say that because there are times I work from home still to this day. We've got an office that I'm in there 2 days a week. I'm still at home. We homeschool our kids. So there's still times where I'm out there, but I'm in here too. And it kind of, fragmented the timing of things, especially being home. My kids are here. Don't really give them full attention. But I would say as of maybe 2 or 3 years ago, my wife said, you know what, Ryan, like, I know you're here. You feel like you're here, but you're not here. You might need to go get an office so you can be intentional. So I got an office, and I think my balance has gotten a little bit better. When I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. And still, the phone still rings after hours and things like that. But I kind of cleaned that up. But now, moving into a new transition, boys at 10 and 5, I would say I've kind of put myself in place over the last decade or so since retiring, where I get to coach my boys' team. I get to help with homeschooling the kids, right? I get to go on the field trips. And some of the off balance early on, I wouldn't say I put the kids second, but I was grinding a little bit, right? Yeah. And now I was grinding so I could have a little freedom now. And I think I'm in a good spot to actually enjoy some more time to give back to them. I actually, on top of coaching my kids' team and doing a little golfing on my side and doing some business, I actually have time to coach. I went back to Norman High School where I went to play ball at, just down the street from here. And I'm a volunteer wide receiver coach that I go out 2 days a week. So I got a little bit more time to do things.
That's awesome.
More in balance now than I was over the last 8-9 years. Let's say that.
I love it. I love it. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to get into real estate investing?
Find a mentor. I think that's as simple as it is, and I think what I've run into, being 37 years old, it's tough for a 37-year-old that might not have made the best decisions early on, to come talk to another 37-year-old about what I should do. I have a lot of youth that will contact me on social media, and I think that's the age that you need to start before you. Just to be candid, before you have a kid before marriage or before you get in credit card debt, right? Before you start these bad habits. So having a mentor and listening early on, I think that's the best thing to do. Not to say you can't be successful if you start later, but a mentor, listen to those people that have come before you, that have done things that you want to do, and don't be shy to go ask somebody. Like I enjoy when people ask me for information because it reminds me of what I was 10 years ago. Right. And I at 37, I have mentors that are 60. So you've got to have somebody there I had a college pastor, his name's Adam Barnett. So this is back in college. And he always said that, and I take this in life too, not just in religion, but you got to have somebody that you're pulling up, right? And you got to have somebody that's pulling you, right? And so I kind of keep those pieces in play where you're giving back and then you're accepting things, right? And then you can kind of grow through those phases.
I like that. It's almost that kind of the the 5 people you hang out around with is who you're going to be, right? So if you have those people pulling you, with a few that you're pulling as well, but you've got to have both for that balance.
Yeah, you got to be able to give back too. That's the biggest thing. Like, all right, I got people looking up to me. I got I got to help them out, and I kind of lived my life that way. And then there's investors that I still talk to today, and I'm like, I want to be you. You know what I mean? I want to be you. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so now my questions to the older, generation, I wouldn't say generation, the older investors or real estate investors, like, I'm already doing a lot of those principles, and now I'm asking those questions. What does your work-life balance look like? Like, you know what I mean? Kind of the questions that you're asking me, and they shed light in those areas.
It makes me think also that, I've got young kiddos too, and I love that, and it makes me think you got to be careful of who's pulling you too, and so those are some big decisions too.
Yeah, 100%. You got to find the right people because you can surround yourself around the wrong crowd. And like you said, the 5 closest people you're with, that's who you're going to become, the average of who you're going to become. I've always wanted to, after reading those books, I keep saying financial peace. I wanted cash flow. So I just surrounded myself around those people. And I will say balance wise, I was grilling my friends. Like, yo, do you have a balance sheet? Well, before they didn't even need a balance sheet. What does your credit look like? And it was almost like they didn't want to talk to me anymore, right? Now we're 37. It's 10 of us. They invest in real estate with me, right? They're working on their balance sheet. They have goals about the future. So there are times that you don't want to throw away those people too, right? So I guess that's a thought too, right?
Have you ever spoke with Robert Kiyosaki or Dave Ramsey or? Have to. They have to have plugged you in somewhere. This is awesome. Yeah,
so I flew out to Arizona and I was on Robert Kiyosaki's podcast 2017, right after I retired, because he heard about the story and I got to sit down with him. He signed my Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and he saw the articles, me mentioning him. So we got to talk, got pictures with them. Dave Ramsey, I was supposed to get on his show, but I was in the NFL at that time when that story broke, so that never worked out. But yeah, I follow those guys. Robert, I doubt he knows who I am even to this day, but I did get to sit down to him on a podcast in person, similar to what we're doing now.
That's awesome. Well, what mistake would you say that you see people make? Whether it's investing or what would you caution your friends or somebody watching?
I tell my wife this all the time, right? And I wouldn't say just tell my wife this. Like, my wife's a social butterfly. She's not about the X's and O's and the budget and the Excel documents, right? I think the biggest mistake people make is if they want to make money, you have to play where the money is. And I don't know how to say it any more simple than that. When you look at, I'll take you back to right after the Rookie Symposium when they're talking about 60%, 67% athletes go broke after 5 years of being in the NFL. I literally Googled. I sat down at my table, and I have a notebook right here that I was taking notes in. And I said, what do rich people do with their money, right? And it talked about they invest in real estate and stock market, and they start their own business. So I was like, well, if that's who I want to be, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to study. So when I talk to people, if you want to make money, play where the money is. Now, that's on the money aspect, right? Obviously, there's more to life than that. There's could be, how to build strong relationships, how to become better yourself through meditation or whatever it might be. But on the business side of things, if you want to make it, play where it is. I don't know how else to say it other than that.
So now, obviously, where you're at, what are your daily non-negotiables that help you stay ahead of the game and be successful? And that is, it could be anywhere from working out, from reading, from educating yourself to whatever. What are your daily or weekly non-negotiables?
It's a good question. I think I've just from being an athlete and being in this world, retired for 10 years, I just know what I'm going to do now. Right. So, and I think there's seasons to it. Like I've
Yeah.
got sat down with the team probably 2 weeks ago and I was like, hey, what are our goals for the next 6 months? And mine was go to the gym 4 days a week because I fell off. Right. I was grinding. I was with the kids a little bit more. Hey, well, we got to get to the gym, get back to our health. So I think that kind of changes with the seasons. I can't say I wake up thinking I've got to do this or I have to do that. I think it's kind of already ingrained in me, right?
Okay.
Like we're going to eat together Monday, Thursday, I'm going to the office, right? When that phone rings in business, I'm going to answer it, right? I'm going to make sure that my employees are happy. They feel like there's that more mobility. I'm going to focus on my business when there's time to focus on my business. And then when it's time to play with the kids, it's time to play with the kids.
Be present.
Yeah, I can't give you one punchline on my non-negotiables, to be honest with you. I feel like, there's always something to learn. I feel like where I am now compared to where I was 8 years ago with uncertainty, where I'm going to go, who do I feel like I'm even worth it? I don't have those feelings anymore.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the real estate market? And then what's like maybe your next big thing or your next big goal?
Yeah. The real estate market right now, middle of 2000, I guess the end of 2025. Obviously, interest rates has been the talk.
Right.
I still believe there's a lot of money on the sideline. Obviously, a lot of that kind of has dwindled with higher interest rates or maybe even higher credit card payments and groceries and cost of living, but there's still a lot of money on the sideline. I do know that my generation, calling a middle millennial, we want to be homeowners, right? So I think there are people still trying to put back enough so they can become that. On the flip side, I think the older generation, call it the baby boomers, they're sitting just a mile north of me. They're sitting on $1 million homes, 5-6 bedrooms, 6,000 square feet. Well, my generation can't afford that. So I don't know what that's going to look like for them trying to liquidate. Hopefully they have some stocks, but no one's buying those homes, especially in a market where my mean price is 300,000, right? At those houses now are north of $1 million. They probably bottom at 300,000. I think that's going to be tougher. Now, obviously, on the flip side, it's tougher for my generation to even make enough money. But my phone, we do sales. My phone is ringing more now this last quarter than it did all of last year. And if you look at the numbers on real estate transactions, this is the highest number over the first 9 months than we saw in 2024 and 2023. And I don't know if that's speaking about one. I think the rates are starting to ease and people are feeling a little bit more comfortable about investing, either for their personal home, building a community, or investing. No one has a crystal ball, but I think we're in a better spot now than we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we're seeing that here locally as well. I mean, real estate, as you know, you want to follow the national trends, but you want to see what's happening locally in your market. And yes. I think we're seeing much of the same. I mean, we're up this year in total number of sales as well, where we hadn't been it was like a 4-year decline pretty much.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was on a snooze.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So and obviously if you look at just different price points, the lower end is still increasing in value. The higher end might be a little stalemate depending on if you're like in a great location or maybe even like by the beach or something. So I think the bottom part of the values will still have some runway to go north. And I think that makes people feel comfortable buying there. I've got a handful of homeowners that are in their 60s and now they're downsizing. So I do think that's going to put a little pressure on my generation that are just starting to get into the starter home and competing a little bit more for that product.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, Ryan, we are obviously this is the Success Blueprint podcast. What would you say is one or two lessons that somebody that is part of your blueprint of just where you're at, how you got there, and just how somebody could follow your path?
Yeah. So the first thing I mentioned about Jerry Smith, my strength coach, find a way, big dog.
Yeah.
Right. There's a saying that says, keep it simple, stupid. Like, I'm not going to run this whole thought, this paragraph. It's find a way, big dog. If you want it, find a way. And I find encouragement and I encourage other people. If there's 10 people in this room, maybe 2 of you guys are going to do it. There's no competition. Unfortunately, I feel that way. So that should give you more strength to say, all right, I'm going to do it. Because they say there's less competition at the top, the more that I've grown in my business and the peers that I've been around, I have noticed the ones that wake up and find a way, there's way fewer of those than the other side. Now, obviously, I think as people age, they might have financial pressures or the family's building and they're like, let's turn it on. So simple thing, find a way, big dog. And then I've had a real estate coach. Her name was Gabby. One thing that I mention often is, now I'm a math guy, I'm an investor, right? So maybe I can give you more light on life in general, but right now we're talking about business, I think. She would always say the path is in the math. The path is in the math, right? So there are going to be items if you do. Say, for instance, I started our sales business in 2020, right as COVID started. And I think I hired her maybe 6 months after that. And she said, Ryan, you're in the sales business. How much money do you want to make? The percentages say if you have 50 people in your phone book, 3 of those people right now, say 100 people, it was a 3%, 3 to 6% close rate. You have 3 to 6 people in your phone book right now. Average ticket, call it ticket. Average income per sale is $5,000. So you're already looking at, now my math's not perfect, say $120,000. If I follow up with 100 people, then I'm going to close $100,000 worth of sales. That number is true. If I want 200,000, I need to continue to follow up with 200 people, right? And I'm in the sales business, so I've always taken that to heart, right? And that's why I feel like being a business owner, you kind of have that motivator there. And then on top of that, she said, Ryan, yes, you want to make this and you spend this, but what about fund money? What are your other goals? Well, I want to buy a rental property a year, right? So now that's the new carrot. Not just enough for my life, here's the new carrot. So that made me wake up. And obviously there's things that you have to do. You got to follow with your clients on Monday. You got to send this on Tuesday. You got to do the social media on Wednesday. There's steps to it, right? But the more people you got to talk to, that's how you win. And so I've taken that to heart. And even, budgets. I talk to people about doing budgets all the time. Hey, what do you spend a month? Some people have no idea. They know what they make, but they don't know. Well, right. The path is in the math. It's going to let you know. Do you have a financial statement? Well, why don't you? You're 30, you have a kid in a house. Why don't you? If you see that number, it might scare you, right? So, hey, you see that number, the path is in the math, right? Lead with that, not emotion. And then you can go forward. Because every day we're not going to wake up and want to grind and build something. You know what I mean? But if you got a goal out there and this is my metrics that I want to hit, I got to hit them.
Awesome.
So good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. This is awesome. I mean, this is so perfect, and it was fun getting to know you. And thank you so much for when I reached out, you answered right back and signed right up. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity to let me share my story.
So where can people find you?
I'm on all social media, just at Ryan Broyles. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Those are the ones I use primarily. So yeah, I try to touch base with whoever reaches out to me. I try to talk as much as possible, build connections, and then, try to build people up and then hop on podcasts like this. So when you share it, someone can say, hey, I like that guy. I want to know more about that guy, or he can do it. I can do it. Right. So that's why I love social media and connecting with people like you guys.
Awesome. Well, if we can ever help you out, please reach out to us, and we're grateful for you. Thank you.
All right. Heck yeah. Thank you so much.